June of this year, about 6 months ago, and in that meeting we went through the entire project. So today I will assume that you are familiar with the project from our previous meeting, and so I will only go into the significant issues that have changed. Can we dim the lights a little bit, perhaps? Would that be helpful? This is an aerial photo of the site. Let me describe the surrounding uses just to refresh your memories. We have a Head Start school to the southeast. We have commercial office and dentist offices to the south. We have residential on Berkesee to the west, rural residential on the west and north sides. We have a golf driving range, you can see there in the light green over on the east, and then beyond that is La Contenta. So this is a slide of our new proposed plan. And we've been busy over the last 6 months. We've been busy meeting with groups that are concerned about the project. We met with My Valley Springs, CSERC, Tom Intusino. They were present at every one of our meetings. And we spent a lot of time discussing the project. Now, this project may look very similar to what we proposed to you last time, and it turns out that it is somewhat similar, but I can assure you that we have dismantled this project in every aspect, reanalyzed every part of it, and put it all back together. What we have done, our open space has been expanded to 13%. No additional heat storm flows from anywhere on the site. Grading conforms as closely as we can to the topography. In addition to that, we have offered to provide 5 houses at a low income level. So let me expand on that just a little bit. We first studied apartments, whether we could do apartments on the site. There's one apartment, a group of apartments that was recently done in La Contenta. That was the best one we could find. And we took that information and we tried to apply it. In that case, it's 8 apartments. We tried to apply that to 200, something like that. I don't know if there's demand for 200, but in any event, it lost a lot of money, as we had discussed in our last meeting. It economically will not make sense for us to do that. So we went back to the drawing board again, and we came up with 3 scenarios to do for sale housing with some kind of a sales price limit. We originally offered to do 15 houses at moderate income levels, but that just doesn't seem to be too appealing to the general public. I don't think they're too excited about that. So we came up with 2 other options. One being we would provide 7 houses at the moderate income level and contribute $200,000 to some housing fund in the county. The third option was to provide low-income housing. We originally wanted to try to do 7, but we couldn't do that because it costs, we lose so much darn money on every one of them. So in discussions with Stephanie Moreno several times, it was her recommendation that we provide low-income housing because that's really, she felt, what was necessary in the county. And we have offered to provide 5. Now, in that scenario, just to let you know, we lose about $75,000 a house. Not lost income, we lose about $75,000 a house. And so it takes a project of 156 houses to do that. It takes market rate houses of a certain number to be able to support the loss that we have on those low-income houses. But I think it's important for us to do that, and we're happy to do so. Cumulative impacts were also a issue. That, once again, has been checked, rechecked. We've expanded the cumulative impact section of our initial study. I think it very well covers all of the issues. That would be traffic, trees, utilities. Those are the main issues. So today, we are here to answer your questions if you may have any. John Zentner, our biologist, is here. He can answer any biological questions you may have. John Torrey, who prepared the negative declaration and initial study, is here to help answer questions. John Truxa, our land use attorney, is here to help answer any questions you may have on that subject. And Eric Kokenak from Brick Engineering is here to answer any civil questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? No one wishes to address the commission. I find that hard to believe. Really do. I just thought that asking someone. Good morning.
Good morning. Colleen Platt with my Hot Springs Park Fund and the Funding Coalition. Excuse me, I'm not quite. We had very little time to prepare for this, as the previous speaker said. We just had a few days to respond to the staff report. It was not what we expected. The staff report was not what we expected. We've been working with the developer and the planning department all summer, and we thought we were going down one direction, and we had sort of thrown over the curve at the last minute. So I apologize that we're not quite as organized as we normally do. I want to give you just a little background on the project so you can understand where we're coming from and how long we have been involved in this project, and that we actually do support the project and the smart growth responsible way.
Colleen, would you please try and speak up a little bit? Your voice is very soft.
Okay, and
Thank
a little
you.
bit better. I can't go up any higher, so I have to go down. We support a good smart growth development project on this site, and we always have. We support it with adequate, affordable workforce housing, mitigation of negative impacts, and consistent with the county general plan and housing element. The property lies in an existing community center that is close to shopping, schools, roads and services. As I mentioned, there's a Head Start next door. There's dental offices, restaurants, retail. There's going to be a big shopping center right there. It's a really good location for a relatively dense, smart infill growth project. The existing zoning is R3. That's kind of the sticking point here. The R3 zoning allows for a wide range of housing choices, including single-family, multifamily, apartments, duplexes, townhomes, mobile home parks. It allows a lot of options for this 34 acres. And it's 34 acres, that's a big parcel. It's actually 4 parcels. So each parcel could be zoned differently. This all doesn't need to be R1 or R3. It's a flexible site. And it could be a model smart growth development. We have also been following this application and working on it for the last 2 years. We were aware of this project before the application was even submitted. We have watched the parcel maps be split and developed since '99. It was approved in 1999. In July 2005, the final phasing was approved for the project, phase 1 and 2. That was in July 2005, and then in December 2005, the applicant goes back and asks for a rezone of these 4 parcels after it had already been through the planning commission and the supervisor, changing from 74 acres to 12 acres. So we've been watching this for a long time. We've made suggestions over the last 2 years about the project to make it a smarter project that would be a benefit to our community. Some of our suggestions have been listened to, and some improvements have been made. As you heard at the presentation, there's more heritage oaks being saved now. The old woodlands are being saved now. They weren't being saved before then. There was only 2 heritage oaks being saved before, so these are some improvements. There is more open space now than there was in the initial project. We did get an oak inventory as requested, and we did get building envelopes to protect the oak trees that are remaining as we requested. Last spring, in reviewing the initial study, we pointed out that the deficient stormwater drainage design was seriously flawed, and we had a civil engineer submit a report to Planning and Public Works, and we were concerned that the deficient report would lead to site runoff that would lead to possible flooding to not just Cosgrove Creek, but also Indian Creek, to the whole area, because we have 2 drainage basins there. Recently, the project applicant's engineer has redone the drainage plan as it needed to be done. And the number of detention basins have been doubled and increased in size, which was what we said in the first place, the original plan was inadequate. We also submitted this new drainage plan to the same engineer for review, and he had a few days to work on it. So we just heard from him this morning, so I think you just got his comments. And he basically, in my just quick reading of the report, said certain parts of the study had been done to a higher standard, but that other calculations have errors, resulting in a 43.3% under-design of the detention basin volumes, and this was unacceptable. The engineer's study should be redone. I still don't understand. There's evidently a lot more review to go through with the drainage plan, but our point in the first place is these plans need to be accurate, because they will lead to site changes, as happened this summer when the drainage plan was changed. It led to major site changes. There was a big increase in drainage basins. So we do want this to be looked at again for accuracy. But to get back to the main problem that we see with the project as it is before us right now, the applicant is still requesting downzoning of the entire site from R3 to R1. It will still create a tremendous loss of affordable workforce housing options, including multifamily. The 5 affordable units offered do not make up for the potential loss of hundreds of affordable multifamily units. We negotiated with the planning department and the developer during 3 meetings this summer, and various emails and letters back and forth. I have a timeline here that is too much to go into, but we started meeting with them in June. We set forth our list of concerns in July, which included multifamily affordable housing, cumulative impacts, drainage planning, etc. At that point, we still really wanted them to consider some portion of the site for multifamily housing. We really need it in this county, and we really need it in the Valley Springs area. I developed a map that listed all the R3 sites in the Valley Springs area. Most of them are all described in the housing element as being for moderate to above moderate housing. There's only one site that's listed as a possible low-income affordable housing site. That site is the Charbonneau Estates proposed project in Valley Springs. And that application is now under submission as approximately anyway, the one R3 zoned site available in Valley Springs for low-income affordable housing is under application right now is 60 single-family affordable homes. So there goes the last multiple-family, low-income affordable choice in Valley Springs. That's it in the housing element. This project is the only thing that's left in our area for multifamily housing in the low-income to affordable range. That's why we keep harping on this. When we met with the developer, we actually spent a lot of time drawing alternative maps for this site. And I don't know if you have this map already. I'm not sure if the planning department does. They should, because we submitted it during the meeting. The maps you see before you are just, we are not professionals, but I am a retired landscape architect, so I have a little bit of site design background. And this is just one idea of an alternative for the site that could be considered with a large amount of single-family housing that would give the developer the profit that they need. And if you look at the parts of the project that are labeled condominiums and apartments, they're relatively small parts of the project, but they're dense. And we don't have 200 apartment units there. There's not that many there. There's I just passed out my last map. I don't have the figure in front of me.
30 multifamily apartments,
Thank you.
50 condos.
We were attempting to really work hard and compromise with the developer here, so we tried to save a large portion of the single-family homes and just get, some 30 units of apartments and about 50 units of condos on there. So it was just, my point is that we were trying to get the developer to consider some other options besides all single-family homes on the site.
So did you submit this to Mr. Pringle?
Yes, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't
And
take that
at what
one.
point was that?
That was in July 25th stakeholder meeting. We handed out the map to Mr. Pringle, and along with our list of concerns on the project. He expressed a reluctance to change the site design at that time or build multifamily housing, but he said he would look at the options. In fact, I think I got a phone call about a week later from him. He said he was looking into the options and would let us know as soon as possible. We didn't hear back on that until the October 24th stakeholder meeting. And at that point, the developer said that multifamily housing would not be offered as it did not pencil out, as he expressed to you, that it doesn't financially work for him. At that point, during the meeting, we requested that he provide some sort of financial analysis of that statement, and he agreed to do that in the meeting. We have not received that information, and we further sent requests to the planning department 2 or 3 times since then requesting that information. We never have received that. But time is running out, and we had met with the stakeholder. We summarized that meeting in notes that we sent to the planning department, asking for confirmation of the 3 options, affordable housing options offered there. After he said that multifamily was not an option, he made it clear that it was all going to be single family. So Stephanie Moreno, Bob Stillman, the developer, and the stakeholders sat around and discussed the single-family options that were to be on the table. And the notes from our version of the meeting are a little bit different than what we heard today. We did hear the original 15 units at $250,000. We did hear the 7 units at $250,000 plus at $200,000 for affordable programs. But the third option that we were told and that we agreed to in the meeting that Stephanie Moreno actually suggested were the 10 units at $200,000. All 4 of us came back from the table with those notes saying 10 units at $200,000. We left the meetings and summarized these notes. And we submitted them to the planning department 2 days after the stakeholder meeting for confirmation that this was correct, what we heard. We didn't receive any response. We also asked for the financial analysis. We didn't receive any response. We emailed again, and we sent a hard copy of this and asked for a response, and we never did receive any response. So we were left with the conclusion that our summary of the meeting must be correct. Otherwise, they would have said that it wasn't. We're just trying to clarify what the understanding was there. Because the developer made it clear that multifamily was not an option, we decided we had to explore the single-family affordable options. We started looking into this. This was not our first choice, but we started looking into this because we really want this project to work. We really want affordable housing for the Valley Springs area. So we went into Stockton and met with a affordable housing developer who specializes in building these units. They've done work all the way up and down the valley. They're called Visionary Homes. We toured some of their properties, met with their CEO. We went to the city of Ripon, toured all the affordable homes in Ripon. We got about a 2-hour tour down there. So we learned a lot about what's available, what programs are out there, what companies are available out there to assist in affordable housing programs and assist finding the buyers. They will educate the buyers. They will obtain financing for the low-income buyers. We had talked to Visionary Homes, and they had offered to partner on this project with the developer. The developer could build the homes exactly as he wanted them, so that they would meet architectural standards and blend into the neighborhood. And Visionary Home Builders would handle the marketing and the financing, so that he wouldn't have to be involved in that. They would find subsidized down payments, and so that low-income people could afford these units. We thought this was a reasonable solution and compromise for this project. And so we wrote a letter to planning and proposed the way this could work with Visionary Home Builders, set out a couple of conditions that we would have liked to see complied with, such as people that live and work in the county would be given first priority to these affordable housing units. That was the suggestion was. We requested an immediate response and a meeting with planning so that they could meet with Visionary Homes and see how this might work with them. We've never heard anything back from planning. We sent a hard copy of our letter. We sent emails. We've never heard anything back. So we were left with the assumption that the 10 affordable at $200,000 homes were the option to be presented today. That's where we had been told in October. We sent our letters. That was our understanding, and nobody ever said anything different to us. We spent a lot of time with this. So we are disappointed when we got the staff report last Friday that said that only 5 affordable homes would be offered. That is just way farther than where we started from on this project, one multi-family housing. We did a lot of compromising through the summer, as did the developer, and I appreciate that, and I acknowledge that. We all compromised, and we all tried to work together, and we thought we had reached a place where we could move forward. But as this project is proposed with only 5 affordable homes, and no multi-family houses, no multi-family options, and still many issues of cumulative impacts and concerns, which we do have some issues still. We do not support this request for a zone change, and we ask that an EIR be completed for this project. And the reason we ask that is that an EIR would require that alternatives to this site design be considered, because we do believe alternatives are out there. For a 34-acre project in Fort Morrison, we should be able to come up with something more than 100% single-family homes. We really need affordable homes, senior housing, condominiums, townhomes, apartments. We need some sort of multi-family housing options in the West Springs area. We don't have any. That summarizes my concern.
Thank you, colleague.
Before I get into my presentation, I want to say a couple of things. I participated in those stakeholder meetings, very colleague, and I will support everything she's offered. That's my understanding also. Another thing on senior housing. A lot of business, a lot of our customers are seniors. I've watched it over and over, where when they have to downsize, and they do not have the option of staying in a community which will be their first choice, because there is nothing available. That I really want that in your mind. Right, getting on with my presentation, plcdec6 has made many written and verbal comments about cumulative impacts of the North Vista Plaza project, especially to Sheriff Department staffing and to traffic congestion on Highway 26. We also noted the inadequate listing of cumulative projects in the initial study document, Our concerns have not been adequately addressed in the staff report or in project mitigations. I'm going to hand out some copies of our development map. You folks have probably seen it before, but I just want to refresh your memory. There's some other charts from the general plan housing element that speak to the horticulture. Law enforcement. Negative and cumulative impacts to law enforcement are significant and are not mitigated. The staff report states the addition of 162 additional single-family residences would potentially result in the need for funding 38% of one deputy sheriff position for every 1,000 population, and they list it as less than significant impact. Negative impacts to law enforcement staff from new subdivisions have been clearly stated in letters to planning and the sheriff department. They do not approve this project without mitigation from developer funds. Planning said additional taxes will provide funding, but this is inaccurate. Taxes are not adequate mitigation. Property tax revenues go into the general fund and are not allocated to a special project impact. The staff report also states impacts to sheriff's department are considered social impacts rather than physical impacts to the environment. This statement also cannot be correct, as police protection is a category of public services and is included in mitigated negative environmental review documents. On page 60 to 61 of the initial study, the North Vista Plaza cumulative project lists 7 residential projects with 573 new single-family residences to be added in the immediate vicinity. Using the average family size of 2.43 from the population and housing section gives us an increase in local population of 1,392. At 1 deputy per 1,000 population, this cumulative increase alone shows an impact and need for more than 1 deputy position. In addition, as My Valley Springs has stated in our letter of May 14, 2007, the cumulative project list is incomplete. There are many other local residential past, present, and future projects that should have been included in the list for cumulative effect. At a minimum, Gold Creek Estates, which is at a population of 936, would have demonstrated the need for 2 more deputies in the area. And if other nearby projects in the planning process were included, such as Mission Ranch, Old Golden Oaks, Spring Ranch Estates, Charbonneau Estates, and Pond Ranch, the population will further increase by 1,960. And we will actually need funding for more than 4 deputy sheriff positions for projects in the vicinity of North Vista Plaza. The statement there is less than significant project or cumulative impacts to police protection is incorrect. Regarding transportation and traffic, the same lack of adequate mitigation and study of cumulative impacts applies to traffic congestion, road capacities, and levels of service, especially on Highway 26 near Valley Springs. The applicant will pay a portion of the cost of a travel signal at the Vista del Lago 26 intersection and will pay required fees for the Valley Springs Benefit Basin and the County RIM program. But the Benefit Basin program is out of date and has not kept up with needs. And the RIM program is partially unfunded. I'm kind of an expert at that, sort of. It's underfunded, and the county has never dealt with that. Fees will likely not be adequate to mitigate this project's share of those improvements needed. According to Caltrans,
But nobody really has any issue physically with this project. There hasn't been any mention of oak trees, mitigation. There hasn't been any mention of grading. There hasn't been, there's been a small mention of storm drainage, and of course that's easily solvable in that process. So I think that if you look at it, it's clear that we have made large steps and productive steps in our discussions with the stakeholders. So it really comes down to affordable housing. under the current zoning, we are allowed to do single-family detached housing, period. And we could do that without asking for a zoning change. It's been Bob Selman's suggestion 2 years ago that we ask for a zoning change so that each of our lots will not then be able to have multiple. It's a combination of detached density. We've done it. And we thought about that from the very beginning. So have we made a change in the project? No. Have we reanalyzed everything? Yes. Because the project concept is the appropriate concept for the site. So the issues about affordable housing are not issues that should relate to this project. They're issues that should be discussed with the general plan. They're issues that should be discussed with the board of supervisors. And I think that those are all very commendable issues, and it's clear that people want affordable housing, they want workforce housing, they want housing that sells for less money. I think that's great. But that doesn't start here in this project. That is a county-wide policy, and I think it's a commendable policy and one that should be worked on. Now, we don't have to provide any affordable housing, but we're doing so. And I think that is a good thing for us to do.
In my mind, the request to change the zoning from R3 to R1 at this particular time, when we're in the process of revising the general plan, what I need to look at is that there's an overwhelming need for additional R1 housing. When considering a proposed zone change, this is in my mind, from R3 to R1, I have to be convinced that there's an overwhelming need for additional R1 housing in the area. We've been provided a map showing the existing R3 multifamily parcels in the Valley Springs area, and in looking at that, I believe that that is an insufficient amount of multifamily parcels given the amount of growth that is occurring in that area. So I haven't heard an argument convincing me that there is a need for additional R1 types of development. I might be open to a combination of, such as was presented, a combination of R3, R1 might, that would have to be, again, presenting the argument that there is an overwhelming need for this in that community. I'm concerned about the requirements for the stipulation of no on-street parking. This is an unenforceable requirement in my view. I do not think the Sheriff's Department has the time nor the desire to enforce such a requirement. So that puts the enforcement back on the Homeowners Association, which results in pitting neighbor against neighbor for enforcement. I understand why the streets were designed in that manner to try and cut the costs and provide an affordable project, but at this day and age and looking forward to the future of Calaveras County, I don't think we're moving in the right direction when we design our streets and state that there will be no on-street parking. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm concerned about what would be the structure of the homeowners' dues, particularly for the affordable housing unit. The homeowners' dues are going to have to cover the road maintenance, association management, maintenance and development of the open space areas, parks, and this can add substantially to the cost of housing in that area, or any area that is subject the homeowners use. So I would like to hear some thought on how do you spread the dues equally among all parcels? Do the people who are trying to qualify for affordable housing, are they paying the same rate as the people who are in the larger parcel single-family homes? You're requesting R1 PG zoning on this property, and in reviewing the PG requirements, the planning commission should be looking at aesthetics and project design. And I think when we are looking at approvals of a dense nature such as this, we have in the past been presented with the project design for us to look at and see how it flows and how it works. And although we have the lot configuration, we don't have any design features that are supposed to be considered during the PD process. I would like to know what happened in terms of the communication between the community groups in Valley Springs and our staff. We heard testimony that there were several meetings and progress was being made, and then at some point around October 26th, there was no more communication. And I'm curious to see what happened, why that communication stopped at that point. That's all I have right now.
Homes that are actually homes that are affordable homes. It's an affordable community. They'll all have a similar look to them. I know he's not here, and I don't want to delve too deeply into that, but it's a much different approach to this. But the percentage of the homes would be greater than what would be required throughout the country. Because as I looked on the internet, and I do not believe Calaveras County is that far behind in adopting an ordinance for affordable homes. Because across the country, most of them are just now starting to come in 205, 206, 207. And they are adding homes at the rate of 10 to 20% on any development. They're not all developed in existing developments. A lot of them are on their own standalone estates, standalone developments rather. And so it's not unusual to see both of these throughout the country. I can read, and I spent quite a bit of time looking at it. I'd like to make sure that I know that the 5 that are in this development are sort of invisible. I'm not really opposed to that. As I thought through that, at least 5 people have a real chance. It's sort of like winning a lottery for them. And as I read this, those 5 homes will be indexed over 30 years, which means essentially they can't buy it and then turn it for a vehicle as soon as they buy it. They've got to keep it for a time. But if they kept their home up and they've done a good job with it, and the neighborhood's kept their home up, in 30 years that home's going to be worth a substantial amount of money. When I plug my number in, that family, if they buy that home, they can actually change the way their future goes for their entire family. Even if, as I was looking at 3% a year over 30 years, let's say their home, they bought it for $200,000, let's say it's worth $400,000, that's the neighborhood. A $400,000 home will be worth well over $1 million. So essentially the future of that family is entirely different than when they moved into it. And so I actually would love to see something like that, whether it's 5 or 10 or whatever. I do like the idea of a certain amount of invisible homes that is in the development, and kind of like to know that. I completely agree with Joyce Tetchell. There needs to be a element in this county where when home rooftops go up, we've got to find a way to provide for the services that are essential. I have stood in front of my business waiting for law enforcement people to come And it's not that they're doing a bad job, it's just flat out they can't get there. And we crossed this river before, and I don't believe there's an ordinance now. But I sure hope that as this develops, that something happens, because I agree, Joyce, that needs to be addressed. And I'm going to record it again. I've said it before, and I'll say it now. As these rooftops go up, there has to be somebody that says, we need a nickel from you to help maintain quality of life as we're moving into. And I'm deeply concerned that that is not there. I wish I was a better expert on the wind piece, but I'm not, so I'm going to avoid that. And that's my 2 cents.
Well, I'll be willing to be the next speaker, but I'm going to begin, and I apologize for sounding like a whiner, but I keep hearing every time a topic is brought up to the planning department, the answer, we just haven't gotten to that, we can't get to that, we're overworked, we're understaffed. I appreciate that, but if that is the case, then the pace of projects absolutely must be slowed down. We cannot move ahead with projects because we simply don't have time and we've made promises to people. We must answer all the questions. And I'm aware that you've had telephone problems in the planning department. I just heard a couple of days ago that you had a major computer problem, and people did not get email messages. I have listened to the testimony of people who sit in this audience who spent literally hundreds of hours doing very serious work. And I will say that I do not buy the argument that only experts can make decisions about projects like this. We have had incredible amounts of extremely carefully thought out and well-researched testimony by members of our community. And even Mr. Pringle himself mentioned this morning in discussions that he had with stakeholders that one of the stakeholders suggested moving a drainage basin, which turned out to be a better idea than his experts had proposed. So the idea that we should only listen to people who have credentials and who wear suits and ties and say that they have a degree, and other people who are willing to spend volunteer hours by the thousands to protect and to protect their community while looking for good projects. They are not saying this should not happen. They're saying it should happen, but it should be done in a way that benefits, what's the word, protects the broader interests of the general public and its health, safety, and welfare. And in my opinion, there are many assertions in our staff report which say, you know, that the cumulative impacts, we have discussed this issue of cumulative impacts. Mr. Kearney just brought up this topic of, I agree completely with what Joyce said about public safety. We say that every time a project comes before us. We say that about cumulative impacts. We must do something about it. It's not his problem. When are we going to start addressing those issues? We have to start somewhere. If we have to start here today, that's the beginning. And the only way it's going to happen in this county is if we say, no, we're not going to approve a project because we have not adequately addressed the problems which have been raised here. Mr. Pringle, I decided last night while I was staying up till 1:30 in the morning, I thought I'd just do a little web surfing, and I looked up Mr. Pringle's website. And I found a description of his work, and it says, under his direction, the firm and its team of construction and design associates are dedicated to achieving its mission, to provide a diverse range of high-quality residential product, upscale production homes, mid- and low-priced production housing, single-family homes, and mid-sized apartments, while meeting strategically sound budget, production, and profit goals. In the description of him, it says, under his direction, they have achieved mid- and low-price production housing. Then I looked at projects which he had done, and then I went to another website, and I looked up inclusionary housing ordinances. He lives, or his office, I think, is in Burlingame, if I understand correctly. They have a 10% inclusionary housing ordinance. He's done projects in Brentwood, Foster City, Palo Alto, Mill Valley, Walnut Creek, all of which have inclusionary housing ordinances. Now, it's possible that maybe he built some of his projects before those inclusionary housing ordinances were implemented. If they did, then maybe he hasn't built under those requirements. But if they did come in afterward, then I have to ask myself, well, maybe he came to Calaveras County because we don't have any kind of ordinances. We're not requiring that people meet these requirements of providing workforce housing. I don't have the answer to that, but I'm just saying. I also noted that he's a member of what's called the Urban Land Institute, so I went on their website and I just punched in the search category workforce housing, and over 1,000 records came up on the subject of workforce housing. I could not access them because I'm not a member of the Urban Land Institute, but they had little short synopses which indicated that there is a tremendous amount of movement in this area, and I will also reveal, I have already told the public and the Planning Commission that I attended those tours in Stockton and Ripon. And I will also note, and I've talked to Stephanie about it, I even proposed that we do a tour with members of the board and members of the commission. And I will say that in Ripon, they are a smaller community. I think their population is only around 15,000. That community is growing at a rate of 3% per year. They initiated their ordinance in 2001, and between 2001 and this year, they built a minimum of 156 affordable homes, which the low-rated home for low-income homeowners is $88,000. That is what they sell their low-income homes for, and then they go up accordingly to, I think, if I recall correctly, maybe about 250,000. I probably just don't have the correct information in front of me, but I do remember the low-income guideline. They do all this with a planning department which is made of one planner, one secretary, and one assistant who handles the interpretation and the negotiations of this ordinance with the developers. And as Mark has pointed out, it appears to be a very harmonious arrangement. I invite you to go look. The homes are beautiful. We literally saw low-income units that were sitting next to homes in the same development which were selling between $800,000 and $1.2 million. And they are successfully doing it. The county, only if and the ordinance requires 3% very low, 3% low, and 3% moderate. And if they want to go beyond the 10%, which in some cases they have, then the city will subsidize them. There is absolutely no subsidy for meeting the 10% requirement. So you can tell us that it can't pencil out. But I can't accept that, I'm sorry. I believe that the failure to provide workforce housing in that area and on an R3 lot is definitely, either if you can't do it and you say it's not feasible, and we have still the outstanding issues about public safety, about traffic, there is no way that I can buy what the finding from the negative declaration says it clearly has met all the requirements to consider the issues less than significant. It simply asserts that. It has not proven it to me. And I'll try to stop with, I have lots of things, as I say, they're very poorly organized, but I'm going to read something which we got last night from Harry Bloom, that, because you mentioned that people have not mentioned oaths, and I think one of the reasons is because there are other issues which have seemed more important, and many people have commended the work that you have done in the oaths. But in this statement about oak tree preservation, it says, it's referring to trees in their natural environment. The trees are used as nesting sites and purchases for the local bird populations. Trees contribute their part to these essentially unmanaged ecosystems. But when a decision is made to use the land on which they stand as a residence area for humans, their role, meaning oaks, in the ecosystem changes. Human proximity changes their role in the new matrix of life which surrounds them. A large native oak tree has a very different impact in a residential setting. An assessment must be made as to the suitability of wildland trees in the neighborhood of houses, streets, sidewalks, and an active human population. And then it goes on to describe, these heritage oaks. And it says the cost of preserving this ground is passed on to the home, like preserving the ground on which heritage oaks often stand. It is natural and normal for a veteran wildland oak tree to have large dead and broken branches in the canopy, to have large amounts of decaying wood and cavities left by broken limbs or created by fire, to feature large cracks in branches or in the trunk. In an unpopulated area, these trees are fine. In a residential area, these trees can be hazardous and often make unsuitable neighbors. So, of course, this is the argument that, you're correct. I mean, if you're going to have a house right next to a tree that has huge broken limbs, you do need to consider taking it away. But the fact that you have mentioned this here proves to me that we need an EIR. That if we didn't develop this land, we would just leave the trees there, and they would continue to live on and on, even if their branches broke, even if they got split. That is the beauty of the oak tree. And to me, one of the things I love about this area is the oaks, which ask nothing and give so much. They keep living. They don't get water. They don't get cared for, but they provide beauty and a canopy and all kinds of benefits to this community that cannot be replaced by putting 3 seedlings in or even 3 15-gallon cans in for every one that's taken away. So this document in itself, to me, proves that we need an EIR, even on oak mitigation and on all the other things. I cannot believe that this project is the right project as a single-family development in a place that is crying out for multifamily. And I feel terrible for you if you can't do it under those circumstances, but I feel like I'm supposed to represent the broader interests of this community, and I don't feel that this project adequately provides for the needs of this community. So those are my comments.
Yeah, we are given a whole multitude of information here on a very short time, and some documents that are even with the county on this affordable housing ordinance that are not existent at the time. And I have to look at some kind of thing where one would say that I'm not sure about if single resident houses are in demand or not. I believe they're probably not in demand anywhere in the state of California right now. But that doesn't mean that a person who wishes to spend his money to get his plant up before the curve changes, and it always does change. They may not be in demand now, but they will be in demand later on in time. And I was given a whole bunch of information on affordable housing, and Holly has been give us a tour down there in Rickon, which we haven't done yet. So that particular field is pretty blank in my mind at the time. And affordable housing is a real good buzzword where it makes a few houses affordable to somebody, but it makes more houses unaffordable for more people. So I'm not sure that some of the ways it's done is really cost effective. But I have to look at the fact that this R3 and R1 are almost interchangeable in this piece of ground here. And the county, without a doubt, has to do something, and I don't particularly like the word affordable. I like the word that we kind of get houses that people can afford who work for a living somewhere. That's, I know a few more words, but on this project, if where would it go, there would be 5 houses in that category, which would, I'll use Steve's word, I think it was, camouflage. You can't see where they are, and it was mold into the rest of the houses, and you wouldn't notice them. And that's a plus. some cases of affordable housing, the person who buys it can't really make a profit off it like the neighbors do, so he doesn't tend to maintenance very well, and pretty quick he got a mess. And by doing this 5 houses, I think I came up with $375,000 off the board for that particular project. If there were to be 15, what some people mentioned, it'd be $1.125 million off the table. If it was 10, it would be $700,000. And for a county that has no mandatory things it can give, to have a developer say that I'd like to put in 5. In my idea, 5 is a whole lot better than none. And I'm not sure what the whole ordinance would be on the other end of this thing, that people have said we should have this into R3 multiple housing. I'm not, because to me that's outside the parameters of this thing, because we are not sitting here dealing on the fact that we would want to have more apartments. Is there demand? I don't know. Are there, if there's a whole acreage here was put into multi-apartments, is there enough work to put everybody in this county busy living there? I don't believe it is in the Valley Springs area myself. But and even though I hate to believe it, but the fact is, the more single resident houses you have who come up and live here, they create money and they demand jobs, and they have jobs done for them. And so, I don't know. Personally, I think that have 5 houses in the hand, so to speak, and over the price of none is a plus. And there's all kinds of learning curves that out of this area, which Holly's talked about, and some of the guys have talked to me about affordable housing. A lot of the work has been done for us already. And can make hopefully money doing what they do. I don't know. And building affordable housing. And this county should have the opportunity, I think, to start somewhere. And I didn't even know about I haven't even heard about what Steve talked about, where it's at, so I have no idea what that has to play in this whole thing, because it's not up before us yet. And it's down the road, and to start out small, doing some things, is always better than start out with a big mass of them, because it's more mistakes there. So I don't know, I know exactly where this property is. I have been around there a lot, and I know exactly what it looks like. And I know that there is a good reason to have R3 close to where there's commercial and properties, so we can the ability to go from one place to another without having some transportation. And I don't believe this is a good spot. So I'm willing to, with some of the things that Suzanne said about the PD part, which we were not praised very well. The PD is a very restricted thing on what you're all going to do and how it's going to look, so we can do that. That, like I say, it's a huge amount of information, and I think that when it first got here, there was a lot of problems with this project when it first came before us, and a lot of things have been solved. And as far as the drainage problem is, I have no problem with the drainage problem being fixed as they go along the building, because you never know what the ground looks like as soon as you start moving dirt around. So, all this has come to one. To me, 5 test affordable housing in Calaveras County is not a bad idea. Thank you.
Ed, this is your district.
Yeah, as a lot of you already know, affordable housing and workplace housing has been an item of interest to me for a number of years, and I think it's important. I mean, people who work in McDonald's have to have a place to live just like everybody else, and I think that needs to be provided. But how it's provided is always a big question. In this particular case here, I'd rather see 10 or 15 instead of 5, but Mr. Pringle's got to make a profit on this whole thing. I mean, he's not here just for his exercise. And so I don't know just how it all gets paid for. He could put in 10 and add so many $1,000s to the price of every other house, or but I'm not sure that's the good solution either. And I think that his concerns have to be somewhat market-driven. So there's a feeling that there's plenty of R1 type of housing available. He's not going to build a whole bunch of houses he can't sell. So I think that this business has to be market-driven. The big thing I think we're maybe overlooking a little bit is we talk about how much should be R3, how much should be R1, or what should be changed. That's what we're here to discuss, I think, is what he asked for, not what we think he should have asked for.
But
So,
it is zoned R3 now.
Yeah, but he's asking to change it.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, when to divide it up somewhere, that's not what he's asked, I don't believe. So I think we have to address what he's asked us to do.
Well, we could direct staff to go back and discuss, all the trees are in them, or reportion it, or something.
I'm not saying,
Take it or leave it, we have options.
but I think that one of the solutions to this, and I'm not sure how to really go about it, things like this 10% for workplace housing or workforce housing, I think along also with this business of mitigation of county services, those are all really critical issues that I think belong to the Board of Supervisors. They need to come up with some kind of ordinance. There will be 10%. There will be so many cents per square foot from the sheriff's office and all those things, and that's what we really need.
Right.
I don't think it's really hardly within it's hard for us to enforce something that doesn't exist in county ordinances. I think the people who have concerns out there in the residential areas ought to be working with your supervisor to get it changed. So we have something to go by, something that has teeth for teeth.
Yeah, but the way that we, so you're putting it back on them, and yet we have decisions as a planning commission to make. And if we determine that the cumulative impacts to this project will then create a safety issue or create a lack of housing or any of this, that's within our purview to make those decisions. So I don't see, we can make those decisions, whether or not the board, and then we would force the board. We keep saying that, yeah, the board should do it, the board should do it. The planning department should do this. And each person is handing the buck to the next person. And nobody is calling anybody to task on it. So we do have the authority as the planning commission to decide whether this project, as it's proposed, will meet the needs of the county. And if we don't think it does, or if we think the impacts are too great, without an EIR, we can ask for an EIR, we can ask them to send it back, and look at other, for example, configurations of maybe taking one block and designing something similar to the map that you were presented, which would offer some different options in terms of the R3 housing. We have that authority.
Well, but we have to somewhat operate within the realm of what the person wants. And if we don't like what he wants, we can turn the project down.
We can.
Absolutely.
We
No
can.
question about that. But I'm not sure we can make a lot of rules for the Board of Supervisors as far as what we can charge for the sheriff's office or what we can charge.
But we can, other communities have said, we cannot provide protection for people, so therefore we cannot approve projects until we have some mechanism for providing that protection that we need. We could do that.
I'd like to ask a question to staff, if that's possible. If Mr. Prickle came to us and with this project and said he didn't want any zone change, and he's going into R3, what would be the difference?
The only, can I answer your question in one round?
Absolutely, Bob, I don't expect anything else.
Okay. It's complicated because it goes to the heart of a number of things you're talking about. The R3 zoning allows single-family residential units and multiple-family residential units. The R3 PD zoning allows the same units, but it puts the aesthetics review requirement on the multiple family residential units. The code specifically excludes the aesthetics view, the aesthetics and parking portion of the PD relative to the single family. the variation in our code, and one of our problems is you have to remember, we've got these codes that are different in a lot of places, but there are codes. In order to do lot sizes less than the minimum parcel size, so that we can move parcel sizes around to terrain or specific types of project design, we have a PD. It's the same language because it provides for two different things. One is, for the sake of argument, density averaging or lot size averaging, and the second is the aesthetics. The aesthetics is not on the table at this point. There's no project before you that is subject to the aesthetics portion. The applicant, under the staff's advice, has agreed to rezone, or petition to rezone, to R1 PD. He needs the PD in order to get to less than 7,000 square feet. So if we want to do any of the smart design types of development, we need a PD to get to less than 7,000 square feet. He doesn't have to rezone for the land use. It's not necessary. The answer to that question is this could be, he would still have to do the R3 PD only so we can do the smaller parcel sizes. It's a technicality really, but that's all that's necessary. He could create a 50,000 square foot lot out there someplace and build a single family residence on it. You know, you're talking a map. Our zoning ordinances do not have prescriptive requirements. We don't say you can only build R3 types of uses in this zone, meaning apartments, and you shall build so many at such a density. We provide the opportunity for the developer at their choice to use certain lands for certain uses. It is applicant driven as to whether that is going to happen. So if the county were to say, okay, I don't want to do R3 PD or R1 PD zoning, you know, you could have a map that would create 7,000 square foot lots across this entire area, and there would be no zone change required. Would that accomplish anything more or less than the applicant is requesting and the board wants? I don't know. Okay, but it's another legal option. That is not what this applicant has asked. He's asked for something that he thinks will blend into what, in his vision, the community will desire. Because he's putting his money on the table that says, if I build it, they will come and buy it. I mean, that's a calculated risk everybody knows. And yeah, today, I'm not sure I'd roll those dice. In 2 years, the answer may be very different. I don't treat this lightly, but I think you have to keep into mind that we do operate under the laws as they currently exist. The board specifically considered social services, and the sheriff's office as a mandatory piece was removed from our general plan years ago. The county council is advised that the sheriff's office's services are in fact social impacts, and we deal with them at the board level, not at the project level. There are differences between what we look at. We look at the physical impacts under the Environmental Quality Act. Whether you built a 7,000 square foot home on a parcel or a 7,000 square foot apartment complex, your obligation is to look at what are the physical impacts of those at this consideration. And there may be more with the higher density relative to traffic, but there shouldn't be more relative to drainage or probably more relative to sewage. I mean, it all has to do with how many users you have. In part. In part it doesn't. The square footage of the road is going to be the same one way or the other if it's the same road pattern. So you look at what are the impacts of one choice over the other. Staff's advice to the applicant was substantially two things: a disclosure, and to make sure that those things that we have considered and approved in the environmental review are what were the actual limitations. You know, I don't want to do a shell game to this commission and say, oh yeah, we're creating 15,000 square foot lots for single family dwellings, that's the request. Do the environmental review and then come back and say, oh, I've changed my mind by right to apartments. So we're trying to accurately describe for you what we believe the development will be under the current zoning, which is allowed, single-family residential units, and let us limit it to that if that's what you approve. You don't have a right to require them to build apartments. I'm sorry, you have a right not to approve this map if you find for some reason you don't want to approve it. But you don't have a right to require any to then come back and build apartments. The board considered the housing element. I'm straying a little bit from the question, so I'm sorry. Maybe I should stop there until you ask me otherwise.
I got just one other thing. I mean, I'll agree with Holly about one problem that we do have, but that's the board's responsibility. And since I've sat at this seat, every time we have a subdivision and we require county specs on the roads they build, and all of a sudden the next thing we tell them you got to put a non-maintained sign up there. They have to have a CC&R or whatever it is to have a group together to figure out some way to maintain these things. To me, is an absolute can of worms. I can't imagine why that's going, but that's their problem, it's not mine. So if subdivision comes to me and says we're going to have county spec roads, but they're not going to be county roads, I suck it up and say, well, there's another can of worms that we have started. And it'll be a can of worms down the road for 15 years. Everybody has sold a house 2 or 3 times, and nobody can remember who the heck was in charge of CC&R building the potholes. But that's a big extension. But thank you, Bob, for that. And then, like I said, we are.